But we're going to learn more about the connection of Colonel Tom Parker. And of course, he managed Elvis Presley his entire career. And for me, learning about Colonel Tom Parker, that he was, as the reporter from the Tampa Bay Times would say, Paul Guzzo would say that he is famous or infamous. I had no idea this connection. Paul, welcome to our For-All podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Paul, you've been doing this for quite a while with the Times, since the late 90s. And we were talking earlier before we started the podcast. You knew of this connection. I did not. How long ago did you know about Colonel Tom Parker being a dog catcher with the Humane Society?
I would say, let's see, I've lived in Tampa since '99, and I would say shortly after I moved here, I learned about him. The great Ted Webb, who passed away recently, the radio personality. I've been friends with him since shortly after I moved here, and he was just such a deep source of local pop culture history. And so he's the one who told me about it. He asked if I'm an Elvis fan. I said, yeah, kind of, before my time. But he told me this story about Tom Parker, and it's always been in my head, like always looking for an excuse to write about it. And the Elvis movie came out, and I understood that Tom Hanks was playing Parker, and really the movie is as much about Parker as Elvis. So I thought that just a great time to remind Tampa about this unique history.
I don't want to turn this into a Ted Webb podcast, but he was awesome. I worked a year and a half with Ted doing some high school football a long time ago. And you talk about a person who knew Tampa Bay's history. It was Ted Webb. And I like how you were able to include all that into the article. What was some of the fascinating new things that you found out about Colonel Tom Parker being in the area and being a dog catcher when you were writing this article?
Well, the most fascinating thing that I did not know was that until doing this was the percentage that Tom Parker took from Elvis. I mean, 50% is, that's outrageous. I think typically you're supposed to get 10%, but that didn't really have much to do with the dog catching. I just found the stories about him funny. He came here as a carny, basically. Tampa was where a lot of the carnival workers stayed during the winter when the show, got off the road. And so he was introduced to Tampa as a carny, and one of his most famous gags, I guess, was dancing chickens. He would put chickens on a hot plate, like live chickens, and as their feet would burn, they would dance. And I guess it's kind of ironic that a man like that would then later go on to care for animals. Some of the stories about him say he really only took the job as a dog catcher because it was a free apartment and a free car. You got to drive the van. But he was just, while doing the research for this story, I went into newspaper archives and put in his name. And I was blown away that the dog catcher was in the paper just about weekly. He knew how to get into the press, whether it was dressing up as Santa Claus to hand out puppies during the holiday season, making up these crazy stories that Ted Webb put on his website. He doesn't think all were true, taking like puppies from a bunch of different mothers, putting them together with one and calling the newspaper reporter and saying, this puppy's had, dozens of puppies, or this mother's had dozens of puppies this week. You got to come check it out. Or claiming he rescued cats from, 10-foot holes and stuff like that. I guess you can never tell what was real and what wasn't.
I know. I found that as the chief marketing officer here at SPCA Tampa Bay, I'm reading some of this like going, if I walked in to my team and I said, here's the deal, guys, this is our story. We're going to put all these litters together and say that they came from one. The room would get silent. They'd look at me like, are you out of your mind? That would never work. But I guess, that shows how he was able, at least back then in the 50s and 60s and 40s, to get the press from a promoting standpoint. The guy knew his material. He knew how to get Elvis. He knew how to get people in front of his product. And do you think at the end, as you mentioned earlier, was it because he loved animals or because he loved to make money?
Yeah, I can't say for certain, but it just seems like he more enjoyed the showmanship of it. Again, he came from a carnival background, running the games, running the sideshows. And a lot of that is just convincing the public that what they're seeing in these sideshows is real. So you could call him a con man. And I think Tom Hanks even said you could, in an interview, you could put a positive spin on that or a negative spin. There's, I guess, a positive way to say you're a con man if you're doing it in an entertaining way. He knew how to sell people on a product. And as the story goes, he was the first one to really see potential in Elvis. He booked him after he left Tampa and put his dog catching ways behind him. He went back into show business, managed a couple country singers, started booking his own shows, and he just booked Elvis just because he was just an up and coming artist. He wasn't a big name yet, and he saw the potential in him, and just really took him on what we would call a barnstorming tour around the country, small venues, grew him into this nationally known act, started putting him on TV and movies. And I mean, even Elvis himself said, without Tom Parker, there's no Elvis.
And without Elvis, there's no Tom Parker. Hey,
I think there still would be a Tom Parker. Locally, he would still be remembered. He was enough of a local personality. Right. I think even if he didn't become a famous rock and roll manager, there'd still be stories about him.
But the whole international, and obviously, I think more people like myself knew about Colonel Tom Parker after Elvis's death. Mm-hmm. As we were saying before we went on the air, he was kind of always in the back of my mind. But I'm always amazed at how well the Tampa Bay Times finds a connection with a huge story and that make that connection with what's going on here in Tampa. Like your article, I had no idea that Elvis was here in Florida and being hidden at the Humane Society for a number of his concerts. That'd be like Taylor Swift coming here for a concert and she'd be hiding at SPCA Tampa Bay. That doesn't happen now because you have these great hotels. Mm-hmm. But were you amazed about how many times that Elvis had actually been here, that duo, and coming back to the Tampa Bay area?
Well, wasn't too amazed by that because Tampa, that armory in West Tampa was a huge spot for concerts.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, like every big name went there. I did a story years back. James Brown used to perform there. I mean, if there was a big name artist, they would perform there. That was really the big concert hall in Tampa, which is crazy to think. No air conditioning. I think they were allowed to smoke inside, so there was no ventilation. I've talked to people who used to go to the shows or even at the athletic events there that said, if you were lucky enough to see through the thick cloud of smoke, you could enjoy the show.
When are you going to see the movie to kind of round out? Obviously, any movie is going to be, not everything is going to be a 110% the truth. It's going to be made for movie drama. But when are you going to see the Elvis movie to kind of become full circle with learning about Tom Hanks and how he portrayed Colonel Tom Parker?
Hopefully next week. I start a 3-week vacation on Monday. I'm going to have a lot of time on my hands I'm looking forward to. So, yeah, I'm definitely going to go check out a few movies while I'm off.
Awesome. Before we let you go, everybody always likes to know from our guests, how many animals you have, who are they, where did you get them?
I have 5 cats and 1 dog. Our first cat was a rescue. Our first 2 were rescues. Our next 3 we got from a friend whose cat got outside and, ended up having a litter. And then our dog is also a rescue.
Oh, good for you, Paul. Anything to add about an upcoming article that you have or finishing up on the Colonel Tom Parker article?
No, I don't have any stories coming up because I start vacation soon. And I would say no animal related stories coming up. But when I do, I'll make sure I let you know.
Well, you get a nice 3-week break and no articles, anything that you're keeping in your back pocket. Hey, folks, follow Paul Guzzo. Just go to Tampa Bay Times. He has a link there. You can email him. You can probably see links to past articles too, right?
Yeah, anything that I've ever written, tampabay.com.
Super. Thank you so much, Paul, for writing that article and for being on our For-All podcast.
I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate what you guys do. Thank you.